And we're live. Woo!
I love the llama always makes me happy when we come on. Hello, everybody. Hi, Tim Hughes. Thank you for being here. We have a Tim and a
Hi,
Tim.
Yeah.
we got two Tims. I love that video, and then the llama comes up. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, there is a long-running kind of theme of llamas in this. Well, I might even ask you the question later if you're lucky. But in the meantime, there may be some people who've been accidentally on a desert island somewhere for the last couple of years and don't know who Tim Hughes is. So like that 2% of the world population who doesn't know your
There's
fame in the world.
bound to be loads of people who don't know who I am.
So for that tribesman who's wandered off the island and is rejoining society, can you describe who Tim Hughes is and what you do and what you're famous for?
So I'm a salesperson. I've been in selling for 25 years, and I looked this up. Was it 14 years ago? I stumbled across social media and decided to get involved in it. My manager told me I need to get online and get on social media, and I put it off by 6 months, and then I started getting involved. First book came out in 2016, which is the first book on social selling, and then I've just brought a new updated version out of that in November of last year, which is my third book.
Social selling. And I see that I was going to ask you about the sign in the back, but that's actually your book.
It's the book, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the book, because I'm very curious. You've been on Tim Lewis's show to talk about your favorite books, but I'm imagining also to talk about this book. Tell us the tidbits and idbits that we all need to know about in your social selling book.
So what I did in the first book was wanting to write a book about, in effect, the contents of my head and how to help people with social selling. Back in 2016, well, 2015, when it was written, it was very, very new. And I'd been part of a rollout of 4,000 people across Europe where we'd rolled out social selling. And it was really about dumping the contents of my head. But so much has changed and moved since then. My publisher came to me and said, we need to do a second edition. COVID, you can imagine, it started, it was selling like truckloads. And so what we did was, well, I went away to Portugal for 2 weeks and completely rewrote the book and put loads of new stuff in. I also went out to practitioners, so people that are doing it now, because quite often people think social selling, it's something like in the future. And what I wanted to do was take people that are doing it now and actually put those bits into the book. So there's my theory and my practice plus other people's practice.
Okay, Tim Lewis, I have a follow-up question, because I realized something. Most people need to do some sort of marketing online, whether they have they're an entrepreneur, whether they're in business, in the business world, and they have to do some kind of selling online, regardless of what they call it. What is exactly social selling?
Okay. A lot of people think it's about selling on social, and actually it's not. It's a name that seemed to be given to it, and we can't kind of get away from it. If people go to Google, that's what they'll be searching for. So what's happened in the past from a marketing perspective is that we've had interruption marketing. So cold calling, adverts, email marketing is I interrupt you and I pitch. And so what people think is what we do is that we come to social and we do that. And unfortunately, social media is social media, which is about being social on media. And so as soon as you come and you basically do interruption and pitch, you just get blocked because it's spam. So social selling isn't that. So I've got a definition that I can read you out of what I think social selling is, which is using your presence and behavior on social media to build influence, make connections, grow relationships and trust, which lead to conversations and commercial interaction. So this is about using social media in effect as a way of having conversations. So a lot of people think that social media is about, well, I'm going to post something on LinkedIn. Yeah. And then you say, okay, so how much revenue do you get from it? And they say, well, what do you mean? Well, you're spending time and effort posting on social media. You must be getting some sort of return on investment or and revenue back on it. And so, you know, if you're posting on social media, you need to be posting on social media for a reason. There's a strategy that needs to be behind it. And usually what you're trying to do is have conversations, because what I sell and what everybody sells in B2B, business to business world, requires you to have a conversation. So this is a platform, social media is a platform that enables you to have conversations at scale. And that's the reasons behind social selling.
Okay, I'm going to dive into it, asking you a silly question straight away.
There's no silly questions, Tim. There's just silly answers.
Oh, one about. I've joked on this show quite a few times that Christelle is going to be starting a llama farm in San Diego. If she theoretically was going to be starting a llama farm,
yeah,
and I know you've said it about B2B, so I mean, there's an element of stuff with B2B and B2C selling, but what kind of techniques could Christelle use to sell, like, I don't know, tickets to people to come to her llama farm in the San Diego area? What sort of technique could she learn from reading your book and all the other stuff you do, presumably, in terms of how to sell access to a llama farm in a social way?
Yeah, we think that you can sell anything through being on social. We got a lot of people saying, well, we've got, you know, there's this, and it's usually because, you know, people are trying to come up with excuses. At the end of the day, certainly from a B2B, we're not, you could sell something if you're business to consumer, but if you think about a llama farm, you're probably going through some sort of considered, you know, I'm going to go to the llama farm. Oh, we're going to go this weekend. Right. Yeah. Now, we know that what buyers do when they buy stuff is that you go online and research. We all have one of these, I don't know why we call them phones anymore, because they're probably computers. And we go online and we search. So what we will do is that we will go either to a search engine, or what we will do is that we would go to social media. So at the moment, most people under the age of 30 actually go straight to social media rather than search engines. But generally what we do is that we will probably search on them at the same time. So as we go online and we're searching, one of the things that we'll probably put into Google, and we'll type in llama farms in San Diego, and that will bring up certain response. Now, I don't know about you, but I just ignore the ads at the top of Google. And I just go to and so if you want to get on the first page of Google, what you need to have done is create content that Google has indexed and sees you as a person that is trustworthy, because they like trustworthy places for content. One of the best places that Google sees as trustworthy content is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come back and tell you about the 3 things that you need to be doing, but we know, so there's a number of things that we know from the data shows. We know that people have now moved from the physical analog world to the digital world. There's now 59.9% of the world's population online. And those people spend 2 hours, 25 minutes a day active on social media. So that's not just about looking at your mates and seeing what they've done. That's about looking at the wider world. So we know that people are searching, and therefore one of the things that you could be doing is that you can be placing content on social media. LinkedIn is a great place to do that. It could be Twitter, it could be Instagram, but the thing is that the more content that you put out, the more that you're building up a library of stuff that's basically going to be found when I go, what we're going to do this weekend. Now, people search on social media differently than they do on Google. If I go to Google and I put in, what's the best CRM system in the world, it won't tell me, because all the CRM vendors will basically buy the search. It'll be a mess. If I go to social media and do that, I will basically get a contribution from somebody within my network about what they think is, they may think something is great, they may think something is bad. But ultimately what I'm doing is I'm getting a view from people, which is very different from people that are buying stuff, you know, buying searches on Google. And the thing about social media is that people are coming to social media and doing what we call discovery. Yeah. So that's where you don't know. I don't know what we need to do something this weekend. What should we do? And we go to social media. Look, there's a llama farm in San Diego. It's just down the road. Why don't we go? I never thought of that. That would be really, really interesting. And then, you know, we've got, so Chris Mason, who's the CEO of Namas Consulting, which is a 120-person Oracle consultancy based in the UK, they got a $2.6 million deal by someone searching for what they sell, not knowing what the answer was, and going, you look interesting, and walking towards them and saying, can you help us? There's then a conversation goes on between the salesperson and the buyer, turns into a $2.6 million deal. So this is not necessarily itsy bitsy stuff. People are doing significant transactions through the help of social media. Sorry, I've talked a lot there.
That's okay.
No, that's good. You mentioned LinkedIn, which is interesting to me. Or not, yeah, LinkedIn. Is that where we should be now? If we have a business, is LinkedIn it?
Well, it depends what business you're in. It depends where your customers are. From my perspective, and from a business to business perspective, LinkedIn probably is the main place where people are and people are going. But it may be, you know, I'm also on Twitter, I'm also on Instagram, and they even let old people like me onto TikTok. So you know, it all depends on where your customers are. And it's interesting, the bit of research that comes out. So I don't know if you ever, there's a guy on LinkedIn called Simon Kemp, and he produces this data of social media. And interestingly, from one of the bits that came out, it came out the other week, one of the bits that came out was that we often think that what we need to do if we're selling to young people is to go to TikTok, which may be the case. But actually in the data that shows that the older you get, the more likely that you go to social media to actually look for brands and look for a solution, which is interesting.
Okay. We already talked about this in the pre-chat, but tell us a bit about what DLA Ignite.
I put the gap.
I saw that.
I saw it because
yeah, sneaky.
I saw that
and saw AI in there.
So what we do is that we transform sales teams.
Yeah.
First and foremost, in terms of getting them to actually start using digital. You know, we're living in a digital first world, and what happens is that most of them are using cold calling and spam emails. And what we've done is that we've actually built our own methodology, which is now backed by the Institute of Sales Professionals. So we've actually got them to certify it. And we've actually created the first certification in social selling, which you can take with us. But one of the, let me just talk through some of the figures. So we've actually just recently taken a cold calling team and completely retrained them in social selling and got them to do social selling. And they're doing cold outbound with social selling. They're not using the phone at all. They're currently, well, previously when they were cold calling, they would get 2 meetings a week and they would get a 0.3% conversion rate. So if you think about when you cold call somebody, your job is to get a next action, which is, it could be a demo, it could be a discovery call or something like that. So they were getting 2 meetings a week and then a 0.3% next action. Using social selling, we're now getting a 9% rate. So every 100 people they connect to, 9% of them will say that they will have a call with them. And of that 9%, 33.6% are basically agreeing to a next action. This is exponentially. You know, if you are doing cold outbound in any shape or form, this is just this is the end of cold calling. I mean, we've always said that people don't like being cold called, and that there's loads of data that says that people hate it. I don't take cold calls, and a lot of people don't. But this is just the final nail in the coffin, that if you're doing cold outbound, and this is the way that you need to get your pipeline, then these figures are just absolutely dynamite and blowing cold calling out the water. Now, what we find with an organization is that whenever we talk about social and running it strategically, the obvious place to start is sales, because partly I've got sales background, but also because what we're able to do is say we can increase your revenue by 30% and reduce your sales cycle by 20%, and people will sign up for that. It's a very clear ROI. Yeah. But what happens is that within the organization, as people start seeing what social enablement does, so you start empowering people outside of the sales team, what happens is that it starts going across the whole of the organization. So the next place we usually talk to is human resources. Because if you think about, I'm online, I'm looking at content as it's going by, and I'm going, boring, 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 boring. That's interesting. What's that? Oh, it's a company's ESG policy. Wow, that looks like a great company. And then a couple of weeks later, you go, oh, they've got a diversity day. Well, that kind of fits with my beliefs and my purpose. And you go, I want to work for this organization. And so what we find is customers actually stop having to pay for recruitment consultants and recruitment ads, because what happens is that because they're positioning the company and the culture, not in a sales way, but in the company and the culture in a way they go, I want to work there. What happens is that they start becoming the employer of choice in their particular marketplace or vertical. And that can go then scale across the whole of the organization. And we're the only company in the world that does this, which is not just social selling, but basically does transformation across the whole of the enterprise from a strategic social perspective.
And you said you have a certification process.
Yes, so we've now built with the Institute of Sales Professionals an exam. So classic sales training is you do the sales training, and at the end of it, you get a certificate. With all that certificate shows is that you turned up. I've done 4 sales methodologies, and only one of them was then used back in the office. So I've been trained on 3 methodologies. I have 3 certificates to say I turned up, but I've never actually used any of them in anger. So they're pretty much not worth the money they're written on. So what we wanted was to have a certificate that wasn't about you turning up, and it was provided by an external body. And that's what the Institute of Sales Professionals have done. They've gone through and basically checked what we're doing. You then sit an exam. The exam is both written and practical, so like a driving test. And so you need to show that you're doing the things that we've taught you to do from a social perspective. And then what happens is the Institute of Sales Professionals give you if you pass the exam, and you can fail, because it's pointless having an exam if you you have to be able to fail as well as pass. And if you pass the exam, then they give you the certificate. So it's not coming from us, it's coming from the Institute of Sales Professionals.
Okay. Can we find the information to enroll and get this through your website?
Yes, it's on dlaignite.com. Yes.
Okay. I have a follow-up question to this also. Sometimes this happens. Not everyone is selling per se on social. So for example, I work for a nonprofit. What we need to get in touch with and find are volunteers and fundraising efforts.
Yes.
And it sounds like it would be the same idea.
It's the same. It's the same concept. Yeah.
Okay.
We get a lot of people saying, yeah, but I'm not in sales. It's like, but you're, the modern buyer, the modern job hunter. There was some research, was it by job seekers, that the Career Arc said that 96% of job seekers are on social media. I don't know what the other 4% are doing. But, the modern investor, everybody, your membership, if it's a membership organization, or who and the volunteers are on social media, and your job is to reach out to them. And so 3 things that you need. One is you need to have what we call a buyer-centric profile. Some people call that a personal brand. I don't like the term personal brand because it kind of sounds like something like Ted Rubin or Brian Solis or something, which is something I can never be that important. You know, we're talking about ordinary people like myself. So how can I be that when someone comes to my LinkedIn profile or my profile on social, someone goes, that looks interesting. I think that person could help me. The next thing you need is a wide and varied network. The way that search works on LinkedIn and most cases on social media, it's to do with who you're connected to. So you need to be connected to as many people. You know, I'm here because I have a joint friend with Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that about that, you know, I need to have those joint connections. And the more of those that you have. Now, LinkedIn allows you to connect to 200 people a week. If there's anybody in sales, use them, but don't spam people. Don't say, I'm your local salesperson. What we do is that we teach people to connect in a non-spammy way.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing you need, which is what I mentioned earlier on, which is content. People are coming to social media not to read brochures. They're coming to social media to find things that they don't know. Llama farms, non-for-profits. You know, if I'm connected to you and I'm seeing this non-for-profit stuff and I'm thinking I've got a free weekend every month and I'm connected and they look really good. Do you know, I'm going to give them a call because you're front of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think about sales in the past, to be front of mind, you would have had to ring me up and said, you know, I've got this non-for-profit. Please, you've just rung me 4 times this week. Whereas on social media, you can just be doing it every day. And I'm going, oh, I love the llamas. I want more llamas. Give me more llamas. You know, and it, you know, in that case, it's just so transformational in the way it's done.
Yeah. Anyway, let's switch topic because there was a risk that I was getting interesting and exciting. You mentioned in the pre-chat that you've been running it sounds like a limited run podcast where you talk to people about AI, the new big thing, artificial intelligence. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm running 3 podcasts at the moment. And so as part of I do a thing called Tim Talk, which is where I find interesting people and we have a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And it can be about 5G. And I found this guy called Ed Fowler, who was recommended by a friend. He said, oh, he knows something about AI. Well, that's great. So I interviewed him and he is just fantastic at taking all the hype and saying, that's rubbish. Well, that's good. And he knows enough to be dangerous. And he's just got a great way about him. So we just sit, and it's like most things. I like this interview. You know, you ask questions and I talk, and on my podcast, I ask questions and they talk.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's got a gaming background, which I don't have, which you kind of need to have to understand some of the things about AI. So we've got one tomorrow, and we're gonna be talking about some of the development, GitHub or something.
Yeah.
People aren't basically using it much anymore, which is where you went and got code. And there's some game out which is using AI to actually develop the programs or something. Anyway, as you can see, I haven't done my prep yet. And anyway, yeah, and it's taking off because it's a real cut through the hype. And we do it as a chat, so that it's a live stream, so people can basically join in and chat and ask questions and that. So yeah, it's got a lot of really good feedback.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned gaming because I was with my boys this weekend for Mother's Day. I have 3 boys. One is 25 and one is 22. Both were actually, all my boys were avid gamers. One was especially good at gaming. And they were saying this weekend that AI is going to be where the next millionaires are made. These are my young men, and explaining why. And so I think it's interesting that you're bringing this topic on. And they were saying it's the people who figure this out who are going to be the next generation of millionaires. So the fact that you said gaming, I'm curious. Maybe I need to tune into to your podcast to find out more. But
you'd be welcome to. It's if you come to my LinkedIn profile, and I live stream all my stuff through my profile. plus my Twitter and stuff. But yeah, if you think about the world today, my partner and I, we were queuing up to get on a plane, and some kids, not our kids, but someone's kids, were sitting on the floor with their iPads. And I said, the future of the world is through an iPad now. Us with and gaming is, and understanding gaming you have a head start understanding both the metaverse and AI. And the next round of millionaires, if not billionaires, will be the people that recognize the opportunity that the metaverse and the AI provide us. It's unlikely to be my generation. It will be that generation, your sons.
The ones who get it. It's what's interesting is I was at a workshop recently, and they're actually teaching social gaming as a class now, and they're seeing the benefit to this. Whereas 10 years ago, it was a waste of time. Everyone's wasting their time, but they're teaching it as classes now, and extremely beneficial in the tech world.
Yeah, because from what I understand, that the position with gaming at the moment is that what happens is you tend to get on and play with a whole bunch of people who are all online with pretty good bandwidth. Though what AI is doing is it actually enables you to. At the moment, what happens is that you're basically within a walled garden, which has been built by the computer. And what's going to happen is that the AI can actually generate stuff. And it's a bit like ChatGPT. So Ed put something in about he wanted to fight in the medieval. I wanted to fight in the English medieval times as a sponge pudding. So you're able to, and then what happens is it automatically generates an environment based on that criteria that you've put in.
The future of education is going to be transformed.
It is because
something go wrong.
Sorry, my machine suddenly went off. Yes, the future is going to be completely transformed, and I think that's one of the debates about, are we going with fact-based, what happened in 1066, or are we going to go where we can actually go to ChatGPT, put in certain things, and come up with an answer? And what we're looking for is curiosity and the ability to go to those platforms and put in those particular questions. Because that, being able to control ChatGPT and put in I can't remember what the title is for putting the prompts. That's it. For the ability to put it. People are already asking. Asking in the job market for ChatGPT prompt writers.
Yeah, I know. It's like I've been experimenting with Bing a bit, actually. Bing's new AI chat thing. I did use ChatGPT a little bit, but now I've discovered that they've introduced new modules to it. I think 2 days ago or something, that makes it a lot more connected to the internet, but it has to be on the paid plan.
Yeah, there's two things to the AI. There's the AI itself, which looks at all of the data going backwards, and then there's an AI on top, which is basically what that does is it filters the answer.
Yeah.
So if you go to AI and say, give me five ways to, I'm trying to think of something, and so you ask it something bad.
Yeah.
Basically, what will happen is that ChatGPT usually comes back and says, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of an arms race at the moment to try and get around that, because like humans that we do that. So one of the ways of getting around it is saying, do this, tell me these bad things, but in the tone of my granny's voice. That's the way of getting, so that's a way people have found. So, and there's this constant battle between the constant learning of the one on the top and the one on the bottom. And really what they're trying to do is, if you think about ChatGPT has access to everything that's been written, but that's also includes, there's a lot of things that a lot of humans have written which are bad.
Yeah.
And so, it's about understanding that those things exist, And the reluctance at the moment, there's a discussion going on in Europe because we have this legislation called GDPR.
Yeah.
And what's happened is that the OpenAI have gone out and got like all the data, but they've not taken into account certain regulations within GDPR, like the right to remain forgotten.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is that people are writing certain prompts, and then they're accessing information which actually they shouldn't access.
Yeah.
I could go on. I've learned a lot. I don't know about you about running a podcast, but I meet lots of really interesting people and have lots of really interesting conversations. And my knowledge of stuff it's just a great way of keeping in touch.
Absolutely. And the conversations just expand, but we have 30 minutes. So as soon as we start to get to the good stuff, we have to sign off. But Tim, where can our friends, where can those interested in finding you and what you do find you on the internet?
Okay. So I'm Timothy or Tim Hughes on LinkedIn. I'm Timothy_Hughes on Twitter, or our website is dlaignite.com. And of course, there is a book which you can get hold of as well, which is on Amazon worldwide.
Social selling, Amazon worldwide, Amazon UK and Amazon USA and Amazon, all of them.
It's on .com, .co.uk,
.mx. There's about 15 different Amazon stores, which is something. I once wrote a bit of code to go around and look at all the reviews on all the Amazon sites. There are like 15 around in the world. It's interesting. Anyway, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm honoured and energized off the back of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. This was brilliant, and we did end up talking AI a little bit, and that was fun. So thank you for sharing with us. I look forward to tuning into your podcast as well. James says an informative and useful interview. Thank you.
And that is that you may notice a slight similarity in surnames of Christelle's there.
Thanks, James. Thank you.
Thank you. And we really appreciate your time, Tim. Thank you everyone for watching. We will see you next week.
Bye.
This is what God requires.